Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to my channel, Ask Jimmy Smith. Today, I'm going to be talking about some breaking news, or at least some recent news, I guess is a better way to put it, for some new Amazon price increases for the 2022 fourth quarter from October 15th through January 14th, actually. And so I wanted to make this video just going over this news as well as telling you, hey, don't panic. Obviously, there's a lot of different things that can go into this. I know as many sellers and there's other YouTubers and just different people in groups and articles, etc., can cause panic around things like increases on fees, which obviously they're no fun. I'd rather not have them, but they aren't something to be panicked over. And so I just wanted to go through the notice that came out from Amazon, an article, as well as the differences in fees from the traditional fees to what they will be, especially considering the fuel and inflation surcharge they added back at the beginning of the year. So I wanted to go through that information and then also explain my thought process around increasing fees specifically on the Amazon marketplace and specifically within the fourth quarter. So let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started on this. Now I'm showing you the article from CNBC. Amazon actually did send an email out to sellers letting them know of this fee increase, but I like to go through some of the articles. I think that there's some additional context in here that can be helpful for you. Now, Amazon is raising fulfillment fees during the holiday shopping period as the company contends with rising costs. As we all know, there's inflation that is happening throughout the world, but specifically in the United States, since that's who I'm talking to, are U.S. sellers typically. And so what we're seeing is that the rising costs, Amazon is going to start increasing fees because of that again. Now, this is the first time Amazon has hiked seller fees for the holidays by adding an additional surcharge for Q4. Now, this is the unfortunate piece. I actually think this will be something that Amazon does every year. I don't believe that they're going to say that it's through inflation. I think that this is going to be something they do every year. They may blame it on inflation, but I think that this is the new norm for Amazon, at least in the fourth quarter. Obviously, Amazon continually raises fees throughout each year. Some years they haven't done that, but typically they will raise their fees at the beginning of each year. And I think that moving forward, Amazon will continue to do this for the fourth quarter because it's not just Amazon that does this. We get UPS, USPS, FedEx rates, all of those things or companies end up raising their fees during the fourth quarter just because they have much more volume. There's more logistics involved. There's rising costs for them to do it. And so it makes sense. I'm not surprised. I am sad about it, but I'm not surprised about it. And I do think that this is something that will happen continually moving forward each year. Now, the notice said that it's from October 15th through January 14th. Third-party sellers who use FBA will have to pay 35 cents per item sold in the US or Canada, an average of 35 cents per item. It actually is, it can fluctuate, but that's the average of 35 cents per item. Additionally, I've seen people say, in some of the different forums that, hey, at least Amazon's not raising FBM fees. But technically, if you're using UPS, USPS, or FedEx, your fees are getting raised to ship stuff to your customers through the Fulfilled by Merchant program on Amazon. So everybody in this case, every seller is getting some sort of an increase in their fees because it's the fourth quarter. And again, it makes sense to me. Now, in going through this article, there were a few other things that I wanted to point out. And so it says this holiday fee comes on top of existing charges that sellers pay for using FBA services. Those costs vary depending on an item's size, category, and weight. For anybody selling on Amazon, you know that there's fees to sell on the platform. But it is adding the holiday surcharge for the first time as expenses are reaching new heights, making it harder for the company to absorb costs tied to the peak shopping season. And it does say that Amazon did not make this decision lightly, which I believe them in this case, that they didn't make the decision lightly. However, it's not a surprise. And again, I do believe it will continue year over year just because they do this now, they can get away with it moving forward as well. And they continue to talk here that at a certain point, you can't just keep absorbing all those costs and run a business that's economic, according to the CEO that they said in April. I assume that was probably regarding the fuel and inflation surcharge. And then lastly, they mentioned that major carriers typically announce surcharges during the holiday shopping season. And last week, as of the time of this recording, the USPS requested a temporary price hike for the holidays to help cover extra handling costs. So this is a common theme that we will see moving forward for all the shipment carriers, from Amazon to USPS, UPS, FedEx, etc. And it's unfortunate that it happens, but in Q4, this is something that we will most likely continue to see. Now let's actually break down what this means for the Amazon fees. Now currently, the core FBA fulfillment fees, excluding apparel, it's showing the non-peak period. So, and this is from April 28th. I believe that is when they instituted the fuel and inflation surcharge, through October 14th. This is showing the non-peak base rate and then the non-peak fulfillment fee, but this actually includes the fuel and inflation surcharge. So typically, for a small standard item at 6 ounces or less, it would cost $2.92 for the fulfillment fee. But with that inflation surcharge, at 5%, it's actually $3.07. And so you can see the differences due to the additional 5% that Amazon was charging for the fuel and inflation surcharge. Now, I'm hoping, but doubtful, I'm hoping that Amazon will take this surcharge away soon, because fuel has been going down. However, inflation has not. So we will see. This will most likely stay at least through the Q4 season as well, even though the charge for gas recently has been going down. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But for large standard items, if it's in the 2 to 3 pound category, it's typically at $5.79, and now you're getting charged $6.08, which is approximately, I believe, 29 cents for an additional 29 cents to have these products fulfilled. You can also see that they charge 32 cents per pound above the first 3 pounds, and the actual base fee is $6.44 versus $6.13. So they did raise both the per pound additional charge, as well as the base fee for the 3 pound or 20 pound large standard items. Now, let's look at how this will actually affect Q4. You can see the peak base rate in Q4 now, because this is the increased rates. Now, before in Q4, you would have been on this non-peak base rate, because there would have been no fuel and inflation surcharge, and there would have been no additional Q4 peak period. But with the Q4 addition, you've got this peak base rate, as well as the fuel and inflation surcharge. So if this were to go away, then you would be at this Q4 rate. If this stays in, then you've got these additional charges as well, because it's 5% on top of this peak base rate, instead of 5% here and then an additional charge. So I know it's a lot of math stuff, but essentially they're saying, hey, with this base rate and non-peak times, so outside of Q4, they're going to be charging this amount, but with the fuel and inflation surcharge, they're adding 5%. Now, inside of Q4, this is their base rate, and then they're adding the 5% on top of that to give you your peak fulfillment fee with the fuel and inflation surcharge. So every other year, let's just say the fees or the base rate was the same. Every other year in Q4, you would have been charged a large standard 2 to 3 pounds would have been $5.79. Now, at the 2 to 3 pounds, the base rate is $6.29, which is approximately 50 cents difference. But with the fuel and inflation surcharge, it's $6.60. So it's almost about 90 cents more per item for this year's Q4 versus typical Q4s in past years. So it does add up to quite a lot more money for Amazon to charge. However, this, unfortunately for customers, will be passed on to the customers. Now, there may be some rogue Amazon sellers that don't end up moving this onto the customer side, don't end up moving this into their pricing. But ultimately, as entrepreneurs, as people running businesses, most of the time, these fees get passed on to customers, and it just adds to the problem of the inflation for customers at the end user for these products that we're selling. So I don't want you to panic about this, because you can build this in. You've got plenty of time. Right now, it's mid-August. We've got a couple months until this takes effect in October 15th, and it will be lasting the 3 months from October 15th to January 14th. It is interesting to me that they say that this is the peak period, when technically I would believe their peak period is probably November 15th to January 15th. But that's Amazon's prerogative, and I don't blame them for raising the fees, as much as it is no fun, and I wish they wouldn't. But ultimately, I wanted to show you the differences in what it typically would be in last year's Q4 of about $5.79 for these large standard 2 to 3 pound items. And now in this year's Q4, if this fuel and inflation surcharge holds, which I believe it will, it would be $6.60. So about 90-cent difference in between the two. So with that information, I wanted to point that out to you. I'll put all the links both to the article as well as to the Amazon webpage showing the fee differences if you need to compare and contrast your small items versus your large items versus any oversized items that you may be selling. Additionally, the reason I put don't panic at the beginning of this is because you can, unfortunately for the customer, but fortunately for you as the seller, you can pass these things on to the end consumer, especially if you've got some sort of a wholesale or private label brand on your Amazon account. Now, if you're doing arbitrage or replenishable products like me and most of the people that I've trained, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult because we will be competing with other sellers that aren't always paying attention to these types of things. So just make sure that whenever you're sourcing products in Q4, if you're doing arbitrage and replens, that you ultimately are double checking what these fees are going to be. So if you're buying products now, let's say you're trying to put together some bundles for candy for the fourth quarter, you need to make sure that you know what the additional fees are going to be moving forward. And so I would most likely, if I was judging the profitability of a product, I'd probably add an additional 50 cents of fees on top of it just to cover everything. I know Amazon said it averages 35 cents, but I'd probably do an extra 50 cents just to make sure, right? Just so we have that extra buffer in there if you're trying to put together some of your Q4 products now, if you're buying those for the Q4 season. And as you get into the Q4 season with October 15th, most of the fee calculators should be accurate because there's plenty of time for them to adjust, whether it's RevSeller or ASIN or you're using anything like Inventory Lab or Replen Dashboard or anything else that has to calculate your profitability. From the October 15th period to January 14th of 2023, those should be accurate because there's plenty of time in making sure they get the fees right for their calculations. So once you're sourcing in Q4, you should be fine. If you're sourcing Q4 products outside of Q4, you're going to want to make sure to add these extra fees into it, because by the time it gets in there and you start selling it, they will be raising those fees. And it doesn't have to be just Q4 products. It could be anything that you're looking at right now that you believe will be selling during this period. You want to make sure that if it's September 15th and you're sourcing products, well, it's going to take a week or so for you to get the shipment out. It's going to take a couple weeks, most likely, for Amazon to receive the product and then to put it live and active in your inventory. And by the time it gets active and it's selling, then you need to know that whenever it sells at those increased fulfillment fees, you're actually making money. So this is something that you need to be planning for now while you're doing your sourcing for products in Q4, because if you don't, you may be getting hit with an additional 35 cents per unit, which can ultimately hurt your bottom line moving forward. However, the other beauty of Q4 is that we are seeing obviously huge increases each year in the fourth quarter for sales that we have, just total product sales. So while you may be paying more fees on these products, hopefully you will be having more sales and more profit because of that, as long as you continue to send in items. So for the next couple months, I would be looking at your current fees and probably subtracting an additional 35 to 50 cents off the top of that, or off the bottom line of that profit. And that way you can be planning for these Q4 fees. And that way you're sourcing products based off that information, so that you aren't making bad buys now that end up hurting you in the future. So if you have any comments or questions, please comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this video. Is there anything else that you're thinking from a fee perspective? Any way else I can help you on this YouTube channel? And please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. This helps me to know that I'm doing a good job, that you're enjoying the content, and that ultimately it encourages me to make more videos and help you as much as possible. So I hope that you have a great rest of your day and a blessed rest of your week.